Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome to my deep dive into the Gnome ancestry in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, I've always been a huge fan of gnomes, but in Pathfinder 2e specifically, they're amazing. They have such cool, unique features that have definitely been touched upon in other systems, but in 2e, they dive head first. Everything that makes a gnome magical and fey-connected and colorful have all been given mechanics and purpose and some really cool meaning in the system. So let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Again, if this is your first time watching one of these deep dives, I don't get too detailed into the lore of these ancestries, otherwise we'd be here forever. I specifically cover the mechanics video. If you're interested, there are definitely videos on the internet here, the World Wide Web, as it were, of ancestry lore regarding the ancestries of Golarion. But starting off, as we always do, with the starting stats, they have a surprising 8 ancestry hit points. Gnomes in Pathfinder are incredibly durable. In fact, one of their starting ability boosts is to Constitution, which is really impressive. Though they be little, they be fierce. They are small though, so that will come into play now and again when deciding what kind of armor and weapons to use, as well as interacting with other creatures. I believe anything small does get penalties to grappling and interacting with larger creatures. Though unlike other systems such as D&D 3.5, the penalty isn't directly to the number, you simply cannot grapple anything more than one size larger than you. So being small, anything large or bigger cannot be grappled. They do have a surprising 25-foot movement speed, though, on par with pretty much all of the other ancestries except for elves. You'd think with such little legs they wouldn't be able to keep up as fast, but man, they're nimble. As I said, they get a boost to Constitution, and the other one goes to their Charisma. What I really kind of like about the gnomes as an ancestry base is they're not incredibly combat-focused, and that speaks true to their lore. While gnome adventurers absolutely exist, they're a very friendly, peace-loving people. They just love adventure and telling stories, and so the Constitution to make it through these adventures and the Charisma to tell these stories is just such a match made in heaven for this ancestry. And of course, adding to their non-aggressiveness, due to their small stature and overall lighter builds, they have a flaw to strength. They are not as bulky as other races. Their muscles are smaller. They actually begin with 3 languages, as well as their bonus from intelligence of Common, Gnomish, and Sylvan, all for free, and then as many as they'd like extra from their intelligence modifier. And they also only have low light vision, not dark vision. With all of that out of the way, let's get to the interesting stuff and jump into heritages. Starting off with the Chameleon Gnome, which first off is just so flavorful and I love it. They use a lot of words to basically say, you can change your color at will. Your skin, your hair, everything physically about you can change. Now, depending on how dramatic the change is, it will take anywhere from 1 action to 1 hour. If you already have green hair and dark brownish skin and you're in the woods, well, for 1 action, you can camouflage into your surroundings. If your color is not quite green, maybe you have pink hair and very, very pale skin in the woods, you can still spend an hour to change your coloring to the dark green, dark brown, and then gain this camouflage bonus. However long it takes, once you've successfully camouflaged, you get a +2 circumstance bonus to stealth checks so long as you're still in matching surroundings. This is nuts, by the way. If we compare this to something off the top of my head that I just talked about, the Shadow Dancer dedication, at 8th level, granting you a +2 to stealth checks in the dark, this is just anywhere you match the surroundings, which can take, at most, an hour. Even if you're in somewhere incredibly industrial with some dark gray and brown metals, you can shift your colors to match the metal. There is nowhere this will not be useful, and this is one of my favorite heritages in the game. On top of this, just fun flavor-wise, is while you're asleep, you are constantly slowly changing colors and hues to match your dream. If you're having a nightmare, your hair might change like a bright, scared red or a dark black. But if you're having a nice, peaceful dream about the ocean, maybe it's a light blue or a sea green. Fey-Touch Gnome is another incredibly powerful heritage. Gnomes have some of the best heritages in the game, in my personal opinion. Fey-Touch Gnome at first glance is just, oh, you get a cantrip. You get any primal cantrip you want, and you can cast it at will. It heightens like normal. Since you get it from your heritage, it uses Charisma as the spellcasting modifier. What's amazing about this heritage is by spending 10 minutes realigning yourself with the Fae, you can switch your cantrip to any other cantrip. Even prepared spellcaster classes can't do that unless they have specific things. This is incredible. To be able to switch from guidance to produce flame, or to any other cantrip you might need in the moment with just 10 minutes? That's amazing! In a campaign, unless you're in the middle of combat or a really heated encounter, it's not hard to find 10 minutes to switch to any other cantrip on the primal spell list. This is amazingly versatile. Additionally, you add the Fae trait to your character, so if you take this heritage, you are a humanoid, gnome, Fae traits. Sensate Gnome is not bad. It's not usually one I will pick. It's similar to the really good ear elves. Basically, you get an imprecise sense of smell up to 30 feet, which will be better or worse depending on if you are upwind or downwind from the scent. You also get a +2 bonus to seek an undetected creature. That's it. Personally, I think I undersell the use of an imprecise scent. I don't think they're that useful, but that's just because I never think to use them. I'm sure there are times where they can save your bacon. Umbral Gnome is dark vision. There's always one. Wellspring Gnome is interesting. This is for gnomes who are still magically inclined, but they don't derive it from the Fae in nature. You can choose a divine, arcane, or occult cantrip and learn that one. It functions very similar to the Fae Touched. The only difference in this one is that you cannot switch this one out. So if you take Fae Touched, it has to be a primal cantrip, but you can switch it in 10 minutes. With Wellspring Gnome, you pick one cantrip and you're stuck with that cantrip, but it can be from any of the other 3 traditions. Additionally, if you ever get a future gnome ancestry feat that grants you a primal spell, you can instead take a spell from the tradition you chose with Wellspring Gnome. So if you choose Divine, and you get a future ancestry feat that grants you a primal spell, you can instead gain a Divine spell. Really cool. I like the idea of a divine touched or an occult cursed gnome. It's really neat. Vivacious Gnome is great in that you're so positive and connected to the first world that negative effects have less of an effect on you. You gain resistance to negative damage equal to half of your level, and the doomed condition is 1 less effective on you. It basically nullifies the first doomed condition you get, so Doomed 1 does nothing to you. Doomed 2 counts and acts like Doomed 1, and Doomed 3 works like Doomed 2, etc. Effectively, you just reduce your doomed condition by 1. You don't remove it, but you treat it as 1 lower. It's really solid. And that's all the gnome heritages. Like I said, some of my favorite in the game, especially the Chameleon and Fae Touched, really cool stuff there. But let's jump into what everyone likes to see from these, the Ancestry feats. Also, worth mentioning, I'm going to start putting these into chapters, because this is a whole thing that YouTube has that I haven't learned how to do at this moment, but hopefully I'll figure it out in time for the premiere today at 7. Basically, if you look at the bar of the YouTube video, you should see it sort of segmented, and you can see there's going to be like introduction, heritages, and then each level of ancestry feats will be its own chapter. So if you're looking for a specific ancestry feat, I'll have them organized by level. I'm hoping to go back and do this for all past deep dives, as well as class deep dives as well. So look forward to that whenever I manage to find 6 hours to sit down and do that. We'll see. Starting off with Animal Accomplice, which is just gain a familiar as an ancestry feat. This is amazing. You just get a familiar. Gnomes are incredible, guys. This is a first level wizard or sorcerer feat, and you can just take it as an ancestry feat. It follows the same rules. It can take the same number of abilities. It says that most gnomes pick a burrowing animal, but it does not have to be. Burrow Elocutionist is amazingly powerful for a level 1 feat. You recognize the chittering of ground creatures as its own peculiar language. You can ask questions of, receive answers from, and use the diplomacy skill with animals that have a burrow speed. This is Speak with Animals as a passive effect at level 1. Yes, they have to be burrowing animals, but those are everywhere, unless you're in the sky or the ocean. But still, like, there's squirrels and moles everywhere in the world. If you spend an hour searching, I bet you can find one and then just strike up a conversation with them. Hey, do you know where the nearest town is? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I hate the town. They go over there. We don't go that way. They don't give us food. They try to kill us. Apparently that's my mole voice. This is super powerful. Fae Fellowship makes you really good at working with and against the Fae. You get a +2 bonus to perception checks and saving throws against Fae, which means they struggle even more to hide from you. You get bonus to perception just to find them. Additionally, you can make an instant diplomacy check against any Fae you meet. You do not need to talk to them for a while. You can just try to make friends the second you meet them. Granted, it takes a -5. But what's amazing about this is there's no reason not to make this check. Should you fail the check with the -5, you can just ignore the failure or the critical failure and make another check after the normal 1 minute of conversation. And it just ignores the previous check. So you can just say, oh, that's a 2, never mind. You just get to say never mind. But if you roll high, bam, your diplomacy is out of the way and they already know you're friendly. This is solid. Additionally, if you have the Glad Hand feat, you don't even take the -5 penalty to make the impression immediately. So good. First World Magic just gets you an extra primal cantrip. That's it. Not too powerful, not too weak. It's good. I mean, it's honestly always a good option. Maybe you didn't take any of the magical heritages and just want a cantrip, or maybe you took Wellspring Gnome and you can take this as an arcane, occult, or divine cantrip. It's a lot of flexibility here. Gnome Obsession is honestly... Dude, Gnome level 1 feats are insane. You pick any lore skill you want, you automatically become an expert in it at level 2, and then at levels 7 and 13, you automatically upgrade to Master and Legendary respectively. This is a level 1 Ancestry feat that gives you 4 skill increases. Over the course of 15 levels, sure, but that's still 4 skill increases for a level 1 Ancestry feat. This is so gross. And I love it. Granted, it's lore, so it's a lot more specific than like Arcana or Occultism, but it's still really good. Lore is helpful. Gnome weapon familiarity. You are trained with the glaive and the kukri because their blades are curved and peculiarly shaped. They're not even just gnome weapons. They're just funny looking blades, and that's why gnomes like them. I love that. You also gain access to uncommon gnome weapons, and depending on proficiency, advanced becomes martial becomes simple. I just love the first part, that, yeah, you get trained in the glaive and kukri because they're shaped funny. And Illusion Sense is just a straight permanent upgrade against illusions. You gain +1 to will saves and perception checks against illusions. Additionally, if you would ever come within 10 feet of an illusion, the GM makes a secret check for you for a chance to automatically disbelieve it, even if you, the player, don't even think it's an illusion. You can just instantly see through it should the GM's secret check pass. Which, by the way, the more I've played Pathfinder, the more I love secret checks. I used to be on the side of, don't take dice away from the player, secret checks are a problem, don't do it. But I'm really starting to enjoy it. I'm really, really liking it. And I might start integrating that into my games more. Side tangent. Anyway, Lost Omens character guide. We have some first level ancestry feats. Gnome Polyglot. This is similar to the Nomadic Halfling, which we haven't covered yet, so I don't know why I brought that up. Spoilers! Spoilers for the Core Rulebook. Basically, if you take this ancestry feat, you get 3 additional languages right when you take the feat, and whenever you take the multilingual feat, instead of gaining 2 additional language, you gain 3. This is, again, just back in that classic gnomes are friendly, they want to be friends with everybody, so they learn every language in the game so they can talk and diplomacize. Is that the word? Diplomacize? Diplomacy? Roll diplomacy with everybody and all be friends. It's great. Grim Insight is so different from everything else that gnomes do. It's strictly for Umbral gnomes, which is the one that granted you Dark Vision. If you ever succeed on a fear saving throw, you get a critical success instead. In addition, the source of the fear effect becomes flat-footed against you. It says you gain insight about your would-be bully that you can exploit. I kinda love reading this as they attempt to scare you, and you just look them dead in the eye and scare them back, and they're flat-footed for 1 turn. I love this feat. God, gnome feats are so good. And they don't stop coming, dude. They don't stop coming. Inventive offensive. You can jury-rig your weapons to perform in unexpected ways. Add one of the following weapon traits to a melee weapon you wield. Deadly D6, disarm, non-lethal, shove, trip, and versatile bludgeoning or piercing or slashing. You cannot add a second trait to a weapon that already has it, so you can't give something with shove again, and it retains this trait until you successfully hit and deal damage with it. Additionally, if you're an expert in crafting, you can do this as a 2 action, so your turn can be somehow strapping a ball to the end of your dagger and then dealing bludgeoning damage with it all in one turn. Like, these aren't necessarily great effects, especially for 3 actions, but it doesn't wear off over time. So you can do this after every encounter. Add Deadly D6 to your weapon. Add Disarm to your weapon. Granted, Deadly D6 is probably the least useful. It's great if it goes off, but remember, even if you hit and don't use the Deadly D6, even if you hit and you don't crit, the Deadly D6 does break off. I just love this so much, especially once you can do it for 2 actions. Just being able to plop something on your weapon and hitting them with it. Oh, it's just so flavorful. I do want to stop for 1 second and talk about this sad gnome right here. I know I said I usually don't get into lore in these videos, but this is my single favorite part of gnomes in Pathfinder. The bleaching. Typically, as a gnome gets on in years, they start to lose their color. This is specifically if their lust for adventure is not sated. If a gnome is stuck in one place, stuck in a routine, doing the same thing over and over again, they actually start to fade and lose their color, like this gentleman here. Now, there are some gnomes who survive this, but most of the time, when you reach the point that this gnome is, they die. Once all of their color has drained, they die. Some gnomes do survive it, and they're called bleachlings. But I just think this is such a unique, dark aspect of gnomes. Everyone sees them and they're like, oh, look at the happy-go-lucky gnomes. They're just ready for the next adventure to make another friend and tell another story. But in reality, that's how they live. That's like food and water to them. If they don't have adventure and stories, they die. And it's really dark and a really cool thing to roleplay in your character. Now, this is not an instant thing. It's not like if they go a week without an adventure, they die. No, it takes months or even years. But it's just this sad fact of life, you know? If they don't keep getting out, they will just slowly whittle away to nothing. It's sad, really. Anyway, off of that, life-giving magic. Once per minute, as a reaction, when you cast an innate spell you gained from your heritage or ancestry feat, you gain temporary hit points equal to half your level. It's not a lot, but remember that this does work with cantrips. It does not say spell slot. So if you use your primal cantrip you got from your heritage, then, that's 1 or 2 temporary hit points until the end of your next turn. I don't think this would have been overpowered if it was once per turn. Because, even at level 20, it's 10 temporary hit points. It's never going to save your life, but it might reduce the damage you take over time. It's a decent feat, a little underwhelming compared to the rest, and pretty useless if you don't already have a heritage that grants you a spell. Natural Performer. For 1 ancestry feat, you get Trained in Performance and a first level performance skill feat. Is this as good as the one that gives you 4 skill increases for the lore skill? Not really, but it's still not bad economy. You're spending 1 ancestry feat for a skill increase and a skill feat, which you usually only get every 2 levels, so it's sort of trading off. It's pretty equal trade in my opinion. Theoretical Acumen is interesting. Once per day, as a free action, when you succeed at a Recall Knowledge check to identify a creature, you can use your DC in that skill, say Arcana, to replace a plethora of things. You can use your Arcana DC in place of a Perception check to find it, a Deception check to feint against it, or an Intimidation check to demoralize it. You can also replace your Armor class with your Skill DC against one of their attacks. So this is really solid once per day, especially if you're a spellcaster, if you're a wizard with a +8 to Arcana, but a 16 armor class, well, that 18, that's an 18 armor class instead of your normal 16. That's a buff. Or if you're a character with a low wisdom score and you're trying to seek this creature, being able to use that DC can help a ton. Worst case scenario, demoralize and faint are great actions, so being able to use intelligence or wisdom on that is really good. I wish it was more than once per day. I think once per hour would have been fair. Unexpected Shift is kind of insane as a reaction. And this is once per round. There's no limitation on this as long as you have a reaction to spend, and you would take damage from really any source. You can roll a DC 16 flat check, so a 25% chance to gain resistance to all damage equal to your level against the effect. You also gain a +2 bonus to saving throws against that effect until the start of your next turn. The only downside is you yourself become dazzled for 1 round. This is kinda nuts. I'm glad they put the dazzled condition on there, because otherwise this would have been way too overpowered. But this is a 25% chance against every time you take damage to reduce the damage by your level. That's crazy. Honestly, especially at lower levels, to be able to reduce a hit by 2 or 3 damage? That's huge! And a bonus to saving throws? This is solid. This is just really, really solid. Being dazzled sucks. Having to roll a flat check because everything's considered concealed is rough. But this could save your life. This could absolutely save your life. Vibrant Display, specifically for chameleon gnomes, is honestly pretty cool. Once every 10 minutes, if you were to take the faint action, you can cause your skin and hair to go discotheque and start changing colors rapidly, and instead of fainting just one creature within melee reach, you can feint against all creatures adjacent to you. So if you're surrounded by 5 creatures, you can use the feint action against all of them, which means if you roll really well and you critically succeed that deception check, then they're all flat-footed. This is really good. And finally, in the APG, we have even more incredible Gnome level 1 feats. Empathetic Plea. You have to be trained in diplomacy, like you're not as a gnome, and is that presumptuous? As a reaction, if you would ever be attacked by a creature that you yourself have not attacked yet, and it has not rolled yet, you can cringe and use your puppy dog eyes and roll diplomacy against the creature about to attack you. Should you critically succeed, they lose their action and cannot attack you until the start of their next turn. Should you just normal succeed, they take a penalty to their strike, a -2. If you're an expert in diplomacy, which you probably will be at level 2, this inflicts a -4 on their attack roll until the beginning of their next turn. That means if they want to attack you 3 times, their third attack penalty is going to be at -14 at level 2. This is nasty. Granted, if you fail, they're immune for 24 hours. But what's really crazy about this is on a success or a critical success, they're not immune afterwards. As long as you yourself do not act hostile towards that particular target, you can keep using this every turn. So long as you have not attacked them, if they keep attacking you, you can keep using Empathetic Plea. Insane. Razzle Dazzle for 1 free action once per hour. If you would ever blind or dazzle a creature, you increase the duration by 1 round. This is really good because there are a lot of little effects that only blind or dazzle for 1 round, so doubling that to 2 is really, really solid. And great action economy. It just makes your blinding and dazzling spells even more effective. Granted, only once per hour. And that is all the level 1 Gnome feats. They're so good! You can't make a wrong choice! There's just so many good Ancestry feats for gnomes. Holy cow, guys. Like, dwarves and elves were cool, but good lord, gnomes are winning as far as Ancestry feats are concerned. Let's get even more insane at level 5. Animal Elocutionist! You can talk to all animals, not just burrowing animals. You had to have taken Burrow Elocutionist first, but you can now talk to all animals. And you get a +1 on your diplomacy checks against them to make an impression. Just permanently, you're just amazing at talking to animals. I mean, there's not much more I can say about this feat. It's just so... What? Oh. Hey, buddy. What's up? What's that? The nice people watching should subscribe? And they should what the video? Like the video? Aw. Well, you're not gonna say no to this little guy, right? Alright, get out of here, buddy. I have a video to do. Bye-bye. That was nice. Energized font. In order to take this, you have to have both a focus pool of at least one focus point and a heritage or ancestry feat that grants you magic. So long as you meet those two requirements, you can take this, and once per day, you can regain an additional focus point. This is pretty good for level 5, as at this point, there's not really a whole lot of ways to get more than one focus point back. So being able to re-up back to 2 focus points after an encounter is solid, and even once you can regain 2 focus points, most classes can't regain 3 until at least the high teen levels, like 13 to 18. At some point in there is where they can usually recover all 3 focus points, so this is good for most of the game. And Gnome Weapon Innovator, crit specialization with any Gnome weapons, as well as the Glaver Kukri, because their blades are shaped funny. Eclectic Obsession is okay, as this is one of the first Gnome feats I'm like, you have to have Gnome Obsession. Once per day, you can become trained in any lore skill for 10 minutes. This is really good, as if you're in a mine, you can be like, hold up, now I have lore mining for 10 minutes. And that can really save you. Granted, it's only trained, and it's only for 10 minutes. You can't make it higher than trained. There might be a higher level feat, we'll see. But it's not bad. I guess you can compare this to the elf ancestry feats, which let you have a different proficiency each day, but that lasted the whole day, whereas this one is only for 10 minutes. Granted, this one you can do on the fly, so right when you need it, you can have it. It's got its ups and downs. Intuitive Illusions, kinda nutty at level 5. You have to have taken Illusion Sense, but once per day as a free action, when your turn begins, you can sustain any illusion spell for a free action. Again, once per day, but this is usually like a level 12 or 14 class feat to no longer have to spend an action to sustain a spell. You can basically think of this as once per day, gain an extra action, which at level 5 is pretty good. Action economy is king, baby, and any bonus actions you can get are really good, especially on a spellcaster. Natural Illusionist, another feat that requires the Illusion Sense first level feat to take, but by drawing upon the first world's magic, you can cast Illusory Disguise, Item Facade, or Ventriloquism once per day. Now that is once per day total, not each, so you can pick one of them to cast once per day, which is kind of unfortunate that you only get to cast one of them, but I suppose gnomes have had it good enough and don't deserve amazing feats all the way through. At 7th level and every 2 levels after, the spell keeps getting heightened, so it does get better, but you can never cast it more than once per day. Project Persona is kind of a fan favorite, I'll be honest. For one action, you can make your armor look however you like. It can be a tuxedo, it can be a loincloth, it can be anything you want. It does not change any statistics or stats or effects in any way. It just changes the look, and people can disbelieve the illusion versus your will DC. It's just fun. There's nothing amazing about this, except for I guess you can roleplay and maybe sneak into some places like a commoner village or a fine party without taking your armor off. But overall, this is just such fun character. I love it. Level 9's First World Adept just lets you cast Fairy Fire and Invisibility at 2nd level once per day each. Just some extra magic for you. Vivacious Conduit is good, albeit a bit late in the game. At level 9, you can take this, and by resting for 10 minutes, you can gain hit points equal to your Constitution modifier times half your level. So it's sort of like a little bit less than half of a normal rest. What is nice that it mentions is you can rest while your wounds are being treated, so while someone treats your wounds, you can Vivacious Conduit and gain additional hit points from that. It's not bad. Though it doesn't say anything about not being able to continue resting, so I suppose you could just keep resting for 10 minutes, which means if someone spends an hour treating your wounds, you would gain that hit point 6 times? Maybe? I don't see anything that says you can't. Maybe this is good. Maybe this is just a, hold on, give me an hour, I'll be at full health. Fortuitous Shift. You have to have taken the Unexpected Shift reaction at 1st level, but now instead of a DC 16 to gain the resistance to damage, it's only a DC 11, and you no longer have the Dazzled condition upon success. This is pretty solid. This removes any negative from it, and now you have a 50% chance by spending your reaction to reduce the damage you take by 9, no matter what the damage is. Really good. Gnome weapon expertise. Anytime you would increase your proficiency from any other source, you also increase it with gnome weapons. Also glaives and kukris, cause their blades are a silly shape. Cautious curiosity. You have to have at least an arcane or occult spell from your heritage or ancestry. You gain the misdirection and silence spells and can cast them as second level innate spells once per day each, but only on yourself. You cannot target other creatures. These ones also do not auto-heighten. Life Leap is a very overcomplicated way of saying you can flash through a creature without rolling acrobatics. As long as the direct opposite, as if you were flanking square of the creature, is within your movement speed, for one action you can teleport there. The lore behind this is kind of insane, in that you pass through the creature's life force. So I guess you, enter their aura or even their bloodstream or something, fly through them like a phase spirit, and then reappear on the other side. Kind of crazy. You also have to be able to see the opposite side. But other than that, there's no saving throw, there's no check, you just do it. Solid way to get out of a corner. Instinctive Obfuscation. As a reaction at level 13, you can only take it if you have an arcane or occult innate spell gained from your heritage or ancestry feat, and once per day when you're attacked, you can just gain the effects of mirror image. You only get 2 mirror images instead of 3, but you just get it. No spell casting, no spell slot, just really good. It's worth noting at this point that with the Wellspring Gnome, you can pick arcane and occult spells, and that's usually how you'll get access to these feats that require those. Unfortunately, there's no support for Divine, so if you happen to be a Wellspring Gnome who took a Divine cantrip, you can't get any of these specific feats, and that's kind of unfortunate. There's no feat support for Divine Wellspring Gnomes, and that's kind of sad. Finally, the last feat we're covering here today is Homeward Bound at level 17. Twice per week, you can teleport to the first world, which is the home of the Fae, and teleport back. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind, the reason it's twice per week is because teleporting there and teleporting back are 2 different casts of the Plane Shift spell, which is what this grants you. So effectively, this is once per week you can teleport there and back. But this is just really good if for any reason you should need to go to the first world, talk to the Fae, strike a deal, get some help. You can go there and back to the material plane once per week. That's kind of nuts. There's not even a prerequisite heritage for this. You just do this. That's great. And that is Gnomes in Pathfinder 2. Yeah, I'm ending the video here because I really like Mr. Bleachling. He's really sad. Gnomes might be my favorite ancestry, honestly. I've played a Gnome Ranger and he's been super fun. I haven't gotten to play him a lot, but I play him in a Pathfinder Society once. I hope to play him some more. No, their feats are insanely good, their heritages are super detailed and really fun and interesting, and their overall lore is just so engaging. I love Gnomes in Pathfinder, y'all. There's nothing else to say about it. Do you plan to play a Gnome? If so, what heritage, what class combo? I want to hear about all your Gnomes down in the description, down in the comments, whatever it is you guys can type into. Also, we got through this whole video without a Gnome.
I'm a Gnome, and you've been Gnomed.
I'll understand if you unsubscribe. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much to my patrons for all of their continued support. You guys are incredible. I'm really almost to the point where this is a stable, full-time job for me. It's right on that cusp where I'm like, but I think we're getting there. Also, thank you for 3,000 subscribers. You guys are absolutely insane. I did not expect this kind of growth in the first 6 months, so sincerely, thank you so much. I've got some really cool things in the works. I've got some updates I gotta get out to you guys. Don't worry, I'm sure you noticed that there was not a Slithering episode uploaded this week. I will get you more information on that soon. I promise the series is not disappearing. There's just some stuff going on behind the scenes. I have a lot to talk about, a lot of new stuff coming. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're excited for future videos. I know I am. And hey, we premiered this at 7 o'clock. So yo, everybody in the premiere, what's good? How you doing? I see you. You don't go unnoticed. Thanks for hanging out, y'all. Alright, enough rambling. I just like talking to you guys. I need to stream more. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.